Welcome to EJB Talks, Rutgers Bloustein School experts in policy, planning, and health, where we talk with our faculty and staff experts, as well as students, about how the fields of public policy, urban planning, public health, health administration, and public and urban informatics affect your lives. Welcome to EJB Talks. I'm Stuart Shapiro, the Associate Dean of Faculty here at the Bloustein School, and the purpose of this podcast is to talk with my colleagues and our alumni about policy, planning, and health, the interaction between these issues, and how they affect people in New Jersey, the United States, and the world. We started this second season of EJB Talks by talking to new faculty members. Having completed that, and please make sure you go and listen to those episodes, we are now returning to our broader community. Jason Redd is a graduate of the Bloustein School. He's currently on the school's advisory board, and in the recent election, he served as an observer of the poll counting process. Jason, welcome.
Welcome, Dean. It's great to be on.
Can you tell us a little bit about your time at the Bloustein School and your career since then?
Sure. I am a proud alum of the Bloustein School twice over. I have a bachelor's of science in public health, and then I stayed and got my master's in city and regional planning degree from the Bloustein School. And then following that, I went out to Utah to Brigham Young University and attended law school.
Oh, wonderful.
Yep. Immediately following getting my legal degree, I clerked for Judge Farber up in Sussex County, New Jersey, and then began my career working for the New Jersey legislature. First in the General Assembly. I took a brief break to go work as the deputy policy director for Governor Corzine's reelection campaign, and then went to work for Senate President Steve Sweeney in the Senate, staffing the Health Committee, then the Chief of Staff to Majority Leader Weinberg, and then Chief Counsel to and Deputy Executive Director to Senate President Sweeney in the Senate Majority. I now work for Gibbons Law Firm, and I split my time doing legal and lobbying work in Washington, D.C. and New Jersey.
So that's fascinating. In the intro, I talked about the interaction between the fields of public health, planning, and policy. And you got a bachelor's degree in public health, you got a master's degree in planning, and your career sounds very much like something a policy graduate would do. Can you talk a little bit about sort of all the connections there between these various fields?
Sure. I think that they're definitely all related. I have a strong interest in health when I was an undergrad and got a lot of the bones and the foundation, as a Bloustein undergrad working towards my BS. One of the professors who had a profound impact on my whole life and my career and my education, he was my advisor at the undergraduate level, and at the graduate level is Dean Greenberg. I took his class as a freshman. We connected. I worked for him. And Professor Mayer at the Brownfield Center, and just really seeing the intersection. Everything's connected, and he really helped me from a young age to see that policy really impacts people's health, and everything goes together. And then also Dean Greenberg is really, really technical, much more technical than I am, and really showing that the things that I observed in terms of in coursework and through my practicum and my work, really could be explained statistically. So you could see that, you could expand that and see that the things that we were observing on a qualitative level could really be expanded and proven on a quantitative level. And so I really credit the Bloustein School with kind of providing me with the framework of a real diverse education, which gave me kind of a stepping stone to get to Trenton and start to work on policies when I worked for then Chairwoman Weinberg, as she ran the Health Committee. Really just the intersection of health with everything. It really is connected. It's connected to education. It's connected to where we put things in terms of planning and building. So I think that I really got the framework as a Bloustein undergrad and then as a Bloustein grad student to just see the connections, see the linkages, and take it from there.
Yeah, I count Dean Greenberg as one of my mentors as well. We'll have to have him on soon. Um, so let's talk about this recent experience you had. What motivated you to become a observer of the poll counting and absentee verification process?
So I'm, if you check my registration, I'm a lifelong Democrat. One of the things I consider myself very fortunate to have a law degree, and even though I'm not a lawyer in the traditional sense, where rarely you will find me in a courtroom, I do recognize, the how fortunate I am to have that degree and the ability to practice law. So every year I volunteer to, assist the voter protection program here in in New Jersey, and that's usually most recently has been read by another Rutgers grad, Rajik Parikh of Regenova Burns, and so I volunteered and said wherever you need me, I'm willing to go to help out to ensure that folks have the opportunity to vote, and there's no barriers. And so about a week before the election, Raj reached out and said we've got a need from Pennsylvania for attorneys who would be willing to assist with during election day. And then he was clear. He said not Philadelphia, not Bucks County. And I said, I told myself I would do whatever I could. This is an important election, so I'll go wherever there's a need. And so I gave my name to Raj, and I ended up going to Blair County, which, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Pennsylvania, Blair County is located between Harrisburg and Pittsburgh, and it's a little bit below State College. The most major town that's in Blair County is Altoona. So I made the decision to go to Altoona, and what I thought was going to be a couple day engagement, and I ended up being there from Monday all the way through to Friday, kind
Wow.
of observing the absentee ballot canvas.
So tell us what you saw.
So I think it was an eye opening experience because I voted, by mail many times, but I never realized everything that went into that process. So being able to see it firsthand, really, there's a lot of moving pieces, and I think that the biggest thing that I saw is the folks who are part of this process are our neighbors. They're folks that they're just regular people. Some of them work for the local government. Some of them are just retirees. Some of them are other folks from the community. But they came down in Blair County. I think we had about 35 people, and they were inside. We had it was a garage kind of where the Department of Transportation for Blair County is situated, and they had tables throughout, so it was all socially distanced, and you would have individuals at the table. And so what we watched was waves of counting the absentee ballots. So the first wave of ballots were folks that had applied for an absentee ballot and received those ballots, and then mailed them back prior to October 22nd. October 22nd is key because that's the date that the county said, okay, this is the point in time we're going to stop. We're gonna take that snapshot and then print the poll books. So those books would go to the polls, so the folks when they went to vote, the people of the polling place would be able to check that book and say, okay, Stuart Shapiro, he received an absentee ballot and he sent it back in. We can't give him a ballot because he's already voted and we've already received it. So it was a protection to make sure that folks didn't vote twice. And so once those folks, people were able to take those ballots, review those, open them, make sure that they were supposed to be counted, and then position them to be counted. The next wave of ballots that were going to be considered were the ballots that were received October 23rd through the Monday before election day. So those ballots were key because they couldn't count those ballots until after election day had occurred, because they needed to compare the poll books to make sure that did Jason Red, did Stuart Shapiro vote? Okay, let's see. We look at the poll book, and the poll book says that they did vote or they didn't, and now we can count it. So that's another level of checks, because it was critical that there were no double counting of ballots. The next round of those of ballots were the ballots that were received, the Monday and Tuesday all the way up until 8 p.m. on election day. And so those ballots again had to be double checked against, everybody that had voted to make sure there were no double counts. And then there was the last round of ballots, which were the provisional ballots, and military ballots and other things like that had come in. So it was a large process, which I just didn't realize all the moving pieces that went in. And I never realized all the checks that went in to ensure that there were no double counting, to ensure that the signatures the signatures, and the individuals were who they said they were. Just a lot of moving pieces, and it really helped me appreciate everything that went in to ensuring that we all have the opportunity to vote. And that's and it's a huge process in general, but on top of a pandemic, I mean, it was even more of a operation because so many more people were voting by mail, in this election.
So that you mentioned that the people that were doing this job essentially are you and I and our neighbors and so on, and I think that's really important, and it's really important particularly because now we're in a period where the work of all these people is being denigrated on a daily basis and being denigrated by people in the highest offices in this country. And to me, that strikes me as an attack on the entire system and on the individual workers. Can you sort of think a little bit about how people will react to that and what the long term effects of the rhetoric that we're hearing is?
Sure. I want to. I There's first off, every morning all the people that were working within, the people that were in there doing the counting, everybody that was in that room except for me and the observer. There was a Republican observer there, and actually we came to become pretty good friends and agreed in terms of how the votes were treated and ballots that may have been disqualified. And we were brought in to look at them and see the determination how it was made. We agreed on a lot, and we erred on allowing folks to vote if the intent was there and it could be proven. Like we were very clear and we were on the same page. But everybody that was there took an oath every morning to that was administered by the clerk in order to do their job in a way that was fair, in a way that was consistent with the law. Um, Blair County is a Republican county. I think the president won the county, in 2016 by I think a 3-1 margin, to Secretary Clinton. So it's definitely a Republican county. I think that if you were looking at the county, the majority of folks that live in the county, and that would be the pool of the folks that were working, at the canvas to count the ballots, are probably majority Republican. But I can say that at no point did I ever feel like that was what they were doing, like they had a bias or whatever. The goal was to get the votes counted. The individuals took the job seriously. The clerk took the job seriously. I still remember kind of once they did the oath in the morning. I remember the solicitor said to the pollsters, not the pollsters, said to the canvassers that were there and said, "Hey, I know that you go home. I know that you watch the news. I know that folks, Pennsylvania is currently in doubt and people are waiting for the votes to be counted." And he said, "I want to make sure that we do this right. I want to make sure that we do this in a way that we can account for the decisions that are made, that we count the votes that can be counted, and we take our time so that we do this right. And if we're the last county to report out the information that we have here, then we're going to be the last county that reports it out. But we're going to do it right so that when people look at our work, they're going to see that we did it in a fair manner and we did it in a consistent manner." So I think that from what I saw in that experience, they approached the job in a way. They were professionals, and they felt like they were ensuring that everybody got the opportunity to cast their ballot, and participate in democracy. I think some of the comments that we've seen, kind of attacking these individuals are unfortunate. I think it's not definitely not helpful, and I think that it it casts shadows over what I think is a pretty significant voter turnout during, a pandemic, one of our country's most trying times. People found a way to vote, whether it was going in person, whether it was voting by absentee ballot in numbers that we've never seen. And so I look at it, Dina, saying like, folks found a way to vote in this time. So it's my hope, as someone who believes that as many folks should vote, that hopefully folks will find a way to vote moving forward, however it is, and will increase people's participation in democracy.
Right. Yeah, that's sort of exactly my sentiment as well. I want to sort of connect the work you've done in the past couple of weeks on this with your studies and the broader fields we have at Bloustein. It used to frustrate me, and I'm a policy and political person through and through. It used to frustrate me that I felt like those in the fields of planning and public health, and even some policy people, didn't really understand the centrality of politics to all those fields. I think the Trump administration, for better or for worse, has made that a little less of a problem. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how politics generally and elections in particular are really important in fields like public health and urban planning.
So I look at this as kind of a creature who's been able to straddle both worlds at times during my career. As someone who's worked to provide technical assistance to policymakers and to help them along the line. So I've seen that connection between when politics and policy and professionals. I've seen that intersection. Um, it's my hope that we will back away from that a little bit moving forward, and hopefully that as we look to our elected officials who go to represent us, whether it be in Trenton, in Washington, that we look for individuals that are going to step back and rely upon the expertise of the folks that are out there, and provide a certain level of direction, but that we get back to a point where we trust the folks who provide public health expertise. We trust the folks who will come in. I think that, like you said, in recent years we've seen kind of the policy or the politics intersect with policy in a negative way, where sometimes decisions are being made and they're not being made necessarily for scientific purposes, or they're not being made for public health purposes. So it is my hope that there's an awareness of the importance of the intersection between politics and policy, but I hope that we get to a point where we go back to allowing the scientists and allowing the folks who work in this space to do their work and trust them to do that work. Because I think that we've seen where there can be catastrophic consequences when we don't. And I think we have folks here, some that have that knowledge, and I think we need to get back to a point where we trust them to do it and allow them to implement, and then provide there always has to be some leading from the policymakers, but I think that we need to let the folks who are experts do their job.
Well, you've hit on a subject for a whole nother podcast. We can definitely talk about the role of experts in democracy, one of my favorite subjects, and one of the things I talk to my students about frequently. But we don't really have time for an extended discussion on that right now. We've touched on a lot of your roles, and it's tough to get everything you do into one podcast here. But I do want to conclude with a little bit about your role on the advisory board for the Bloustein School, and ask you sort of what directions you'd like to see education and policy planning and health take, particularly in the wake of our current challenges, the pandemic, the recession, the incredible polarization that has resulted in the election we just had. All of those things, I think, have to have some impact on the way we talk to our students and the way we think about education in these fields. And I was wondering what your perspective on that was.
No, I am a big fan of our new dean. And when she came on board, Vanu reached out and asked me if I would consider joining the advisory board. And I consider it a tremendous honor. One, because I owe so much of what I do personally to the education that I received here as an undergraduate and a graduate student. So it's been great to be on board. I think that the dean and very much what she's the right person kind of bring all of our moving pieces together, whether it's public health, whether it's planning, whether it's health administration, to pull it all together, because her background is very much looking at data and figuring out, the different components that contribute to that data. And I think that with her leading the institution, like, she's really kind of provided a vision where how can we pull this all together so that we can achieve, better outcomes kind of in the health space. So I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited about the discussions that we have, with the other members of the advisory board, kind of talking about how do we tear down the silos and kind of promote our faculty to do, more things, that kind of we can see what the tangible results are going to be within our community. It's really, really exciting to be kind of coming in at the, I guess, right, at the beginning with our dean, as she has this vision that she's putting out. And then we pair that with our new president, who is a rock star, and just really figuring out how that we can fit together. Um, and really, because they are linked, and I think we've got the right people here and kind of inertia to get to that point. I would also be remiss, Dean, if I didn't mention that we've got a big birthday coming for the Bloustein School in the next 2 years. So I think that it's a really big opportunity for us to celebrate, where we've come from, what our future is, celebrate our graduates, celebrate our amazing faculty. So that's one of the things that I've been tasked with to serve on that committee. I'm super excited to be a part of it, and I'm just excited because it's a celebration of the Bloustein School and how long we've been around, but it's also just a celebration of everything that's come to it, and the future is bright for where we're going.
Well, I can promise you that the 30th anniversary will certainly be featured on this podcast, and maybe we'll have you back as that approaches. Thank you very much for coming on today. It was a great discussion, and I'm sure our listeners are going to appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Dean. It's great to be on.
Also, thank you to our production team, Amy Cobb and Karen Olson. We'll be back next week with another talk from another expert from the Bloustein School. Until then, stay safe.